In this tutorial, we will be rendering with Deadline on a computer in the cloud. I'm going to be using Paperspace. I feel like this is the easiest way to get cloud infrastructure up and running. I already have an account set up, so whenever I go to sign up for an account, it just takes me into my own account. I already have a few machines here. You'd have to go through, create an account, and link a credit card to it since this is a paid service. I'm going to go ahead and click Create Machine, and that will take me to the machine creation webpage. We want a Windows machine and we want to use Windows 10 licensed. Go ahead and pick a GPU. You can do a single GPU or multi GPUs. For this tutorial, I'm just going to do the A5000. Could probably get away with 50 gigs, but I'm just going to say 100 gigs for storage. I'm on the East Coast, so choose East Coast. Give this new machine a name. And then the rest of these settings look good. So this will cost me $1.39 an hour to run this machine. So I can go ahead and hit create. And this will only cost me that much as the machine's actually running. So I turn it off and I don't get charged anything else. I'm just gonna wait for it to create the machine, do all the setup it needs to do, and then it will tell us whenever the machine is ready to launch. The machine is on and ready to go, so we can go ahead and click the launch button, and that will open up a browser-based remote desktop application, and we can control this remote machine directly from the browser. So now that's all that's left. So I'm immediately going to start in downloading all the software we need. Start with Cinema 4D since that is going to take the longest to install. And run through the install process of the Maxon app. And I will install another critical piece of software we will need to make all of this work. It's a little piece of software called ZeroTier, and what it does is it creates a network that is like your local area network, your LAN, but it will do it across the entire internet. So you can create a LAN across the internet, and all that traffic is encrypted, so you don't have to worry about anyone accessing it from the outside world unless you want them to. Again, I already have an account on here, but you can go ahead and set up an account, and for what you're doing, most likely this will be free. I think up to like 25 computers or different machines. ZeroTier is free. I already created a network, but if you don't have a network created, go ahead and create a network. I'll call this one Deadline Toot. And I'm just going to go and continue my setup of my Maxon app. Install up and running. And I just want to make sure that the version of C4D I am running on my cloud computer is the same as what I'm running on all the rest of my computers. So 2023.1.0, that looks like that's the most recent. So I'll go ahead and install that. Okay, so now we have our network set up in ZeroTier. We can download the actual ZeroTier software. And for Windows, I will grab the MSI installer. Let that download, and then I'll just step through my C4D install as that's happening. Let's do our ZeroTier install. So now you'll notice in the taskbar or system tray in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, there is a ZeroTier icon. Click on that, and if you can't find it, just click the little up area. So join network, and I will join the 16-digit number right underneath the name. So just paste that into that icon. And then if you scroll down on the network page in ZeroTier and wait usually less than a minute, it will show up, and you can give this a name. And you'll notice I actually already have my other two machines set up on this, so you will have to follow these steps on any machine you want to be part of this network. So I had my file server running on my Neat workstation machine, so I will copy that IP address, and I can do the same thing I did before for connecting to a file share. Is do / / and then that IP address, and enter the username and password for that machine. And then go ahead and map that drive to the same drive letter we're using on all the other machines so it can see the same assets. It will be a little bit slow. We're probably introducing rendering bottleneck in the file transfer, because you probably won't get more than 5 megabytes per second is probably what you're going to max out with over SMB, and it just gets slower the further away the cloud computer is from the computer that is hosting the files. There is some other options for how to share these out, but this is the fastest way to get up and running. So we're just going to keep going with this. Now I can connect to the machine that is running our deadline infrastructure, or the patient staircase machine, using the IP address here on 0 tier. And the same way we did before, by connecting to the file browser at the IP address 8080, admin username and password, we can grab the deadline installer, and we can also grab the certificate we'll need to connect to that infrastructure. So grab the Windows deadline installer, download that, and then I will just go ahead and download the certificate too while I'm here. All right, download's finished. So again, just install the deadline client installer just like we've done in the past. And this time, when we use remote connection server, we will connect to the IP address from the 0 tier interface. So let's just go check what that is. Make sure we copy that, paste it in, and the port we were using is 4433. Say next, grab the certificate we just downloaded, and I can just grab from our environment file before the password you're using for the RCS cert pass. So just copy that, and then go up here, sync the clipboards, and then paste that password in, and then hit next. I am also going to install Redshift, and I know I have that latest version installed, so I'm just going to go through this process because we got a GPU workstation. Let's use a GPU-based renderer. So as those installs are finishing, I'm going to go ahead and change the test project to be a Redshift project and maybe make it look a little bit different or better. All right, let's just check on our install process, finish that up. Looks like the deadline client's finished. All right. Let's just open our monitor and make sure that that's working. Okay, it looks like deadline monitor is working. We can see our other 2 machines online, and the one that is offline is the one that we are currently on, but it should come online in a second. So what I want to do now is I only have 2 Redshift licenses, so I want to create a group of my 2 more powerful machines, and I want to manage the pools. So a pool in a pool in Deadline is a way to separate different machines into groups based on usually what kind of resources they have, so what software or what kind of project you'll be rendering on those machines. And we'll get to see how that is used later as we submit this job to the farm. Also, while we're here, we will download our integrated submission scripts for Cinema 4D. we'll do the annoying thing that we have to do to make sure that using the deadline, the Maxon app with the command line renderer, it will actually render and pull license. For some reason, it always errors out the first time you run it on a new install. So it'll do this thing. So you just have to let that happen. And then here we can say we're using the Maxon app to do our licensing. And then we'll have to exit out of this and just run it again one more time to make sure that it actually pulls a license. And I'm going to go back to Redshiftifying the scene. And it's always important to remember, notice here this is not in my P drive. So I right-clicked on that HDR I'm using and found it in Windows Explorer, copied it, and I'm just going to paste it into the .text folder and relink it. You could save project with assets, but I don't want to resave it and I want to create a new folder. So I'm just going to copy that one texture file, that one HDR file that we are missing over, and then go ahead and relink it in the asset manager. All right, now that it's relinked, everything's rendering to the right place. We can hit submit. So this time we will choose the pool Redshift. So this will only use the 2 computers I have right now that actually are using a Redshift license. I'm still going to do 10 frames per task. This renders are going to be a little bit longer, so it might not make as much sense. You might not get as much savings doing that, but I'm just going to keep it there. All right, and that has been submitted, and we can check out the renderer. All right, and it looks like we have the first couple frames coming down from the cloud workstation, and they look pretty much like what we were seeing in the viewport. So I will just let the rest of this go and come back to it. What you'll notice is the progress isn't actually accurate for the entire job. That's just a weird little bug. If a job starts taking way more time than the previous ones on similar machine, then there might be a problem, but otherwise I just let it go and not try to worry too much about what the actual progress of the tasks say. And the render is done, twice as fast as it would have been completed if it was on just my local machine. I'm going to go through and just release any licenses I have on this machine and shut it down. So the moment you shut it down, it stops charging you for the render time or the machine time. And I think they bill per minute. So yeah, if I only was running that for 15 minutes, it would be less than $1. So what I can do now that it's shut down is I can create a template of this machine. And what that allows us to do is to create new machines. So if you want to be running more than just one machine, if you had enough licenses of Redshift, or you're doing something like Blender that doesn't require a license, you can create as many machines with the same software that we just installed on them without having to reinstall all that software. You will have to do a little bit of setup, but not nearly as much as we just did. So I click the create template and I'll just give it a name. And then if you want to create a machine from the template, just click on that button. something that's important to know about this is you can only create a new machine with that template that has the same architecture GPU, which is exactly the GPU we want. So it's not really a huge deal for this. I'm pretty much just going through the same steps as before. And I'll give it a name. And say create. There are 3 components that will not work with a templated machine. First one we will tackle is 0 tier. The first thing we have to do is in the start menu, type in services and open that up and scroll down until you find the 0 tier service. And let's stop that. Then we can go to the program data folder and we have to delete 2 files. So %, program data, %, hit enter. That'll take us to the program data folder, 0 tier, 1, and then we'll delete identity public and identity secret. So with those 2 things deleted, we can start 0 tier service again, and it will recreate identity public and identity secret. And we can open up the 0 tier GUI, right click, join network, and we will join the network the same way we did before. So I'll grab the network ID, copy it, and paste it to join. And just wait for that to show up. Again, shouldn't take that long. And authorize it. Okay, so 0 tier is fixed. Now on to fixing the remote connection server. So I'm going to open up the task manager and just kill any deadline processes running. It's deadline worker and deadline launcher. I'm just going to kill both of those from here. And then I can navigate to the app data folder, which is %, app data, all one word, %, and hit enter, or actually Microsoft, hit enter. And then I can go into the crypto folder. Now, you can try to rename this whole folder, but it's going to throw an error for me. So I'm just going to go into it and rename these 2 folders in here. So now that those 2 folders are named key old and RSA old, we can go ahead and restart the deadline monitor. All right, deadline works. So let's just get the Maxon up and running and make sure that this machine has a license. To test to see if this is up and running, I'm going to requeue this job. In order to requeue it, I have to go to Tools and enable Super User Mode, since I was not the user on the I was not the user on the Paperspace computer. So click Requeue, say OK. And what I will quickly realize is that I forgot 2 things. The first thing is the new Paperspace computer was not added to the Redshift pool. So to add that, I'll right click on the worker, manage pools, select the Redshift, select the worker, and hit add. And then hit OK. The next thing I realized was that I did not remount the P drive. So I have to click on that and re-enter my username and password. When I did that, it still gave an error, but if I click through the link, if I clicked on the drive, it still worked. With that little problem fixed, both machines are now currently rendering, and that's it. That's easy cloud rendering with Deadline and Paperspace.